to infinity and beyond!
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No. I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. I'm Zach Goins, and I am here with Johnny Sobchak for an action-packed, emotional, heart-wrenching episode. Johnny, isn't it?
I suppose so.
I need that passion. I need that passion from you, Johnny, to match my energy for this No Time to Die themed episode.
Yeah, it is No Time to Die. It's no time to not be hyped, because this is like the first, I feel, big kind of event film in a while. I mean, I know we've had some, Shang-Chi was obviously a big deal. Black Widow, F9. So we've had some big ones this year, but I feel like, at least for me, I think this is by far.
Right. As far as ones that you and I have both been like, we were both like intrigued by Shang-Chi, but neither of us was like counting down the days. But
right.
For this, obviously being the first movie that really like up and left last March.
That definitely
has like the length and the anticipation for it, and then also just the fact of the movie itself being one that we were both very invested in and excited to check out. So the hype is certainly there, like you said.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it did. I mean, this was originally before, at the very first release date that it got was for November 2019, so nearly 2 years ago. Before they had directors switch around, writers in and out, which you can probably tell a little bit by the screenplay. And I remember very distinctly, I think it was March last year. I was outside like doing some yard work and I got the notification. It was like, no. And I had already gotten tickets as well for IMAX. And they said, it's getting delayed until, I think it was November was what they were counting on, November of last year. And then of course, delay after delay after delay. So yeah, this is a long time coming, and it's a long time coming in the context of Daniel Craig in his tenure as Bond. He has the longest tenure of any of the actors. The first film came out in 2006. I think he was announced in like 2005 or something. So, I mean, over 15 years, that's a big chunk of someone's life. And it kind of reminds me of like when Christian Bale, was in as Batman, or, even someone like Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. Big, it kind of it really defines their career. So I'm excited to talk about it. We'll talk about my feelings on the movie later, but I thought it was a pleasing conclusion to his version of this character.
As did I, but like you said, more on that later. We've got to do the traditional stuff here. What's the rundown on the schedule today? We are talking news of the week, then No Time to Die review, and then we're not relating it to No Time to Die, but we're throwing in a little extra for you. We've got an interview with Nick Mohammed from Ted Lasso. He plays Nathan Shelley, Nate the Great, but with the Ted Lasso season 2 finale just airing this past week, we are going to toss that in there. If you want to watch the full video of the interview, then you can check that out on our YouTube channel. But that'll be at the very end of this episode, so stay tuned. But first off, anything popping this week, Johnny, on the personal life, on the cinematic life, or the television life for you?
Not really. I mean, we're doing this episode early.
This is a quick turnaround from a Monday recording to now a Friday recording.
Yeah. So really, I've been sitting in my room literally all week. So the first time I went out was last night to go see the movie. So I was really excited, looking forward to getting out and getting a break from work and sitting with an audience to see something pretty awesome, pretty exciting. So Yeah, I saw it last night and I am ready. I'm itching to see it again tomorrow night, and I'm going to go see it. My girlfriend and I, she has yet to see it. We're going to head out to the biggest and best IMAX screen in the state, little date trip up in Raleigh. So I'm looking forward to that.
We'll be pleased to have you up here in the city of Oaks. But for me personally, this week kind of was like an amalgamation of different television shows ending for me. That's a Jake Lawler vocabulary word right there. But obviously, like I just mentioned, Ted Lasso wrapped up this week. We had the finale that came out on Friday. So that was a really, for a season that people were back and forth on. I personally, with the exception of like maybe one or two beats, like I still loved it. Not quite as good as season one, but still fantastic television. I thought the finale did an excellent job wrapping up the season 2 arcs and then pushing everything in the direction of season 3. There's some huge shocking moments that are just, you would think like, I know that you're still on the outside not having seen it, but I would imagine that for you or for other people who haven't watched it, that they hear all the hype, but they're just like, man, how deep can it really get? Or how crazy can a sports comedy really get? But then like it really goes places that you don't expect it to go. So that was a really solid finale. And like I said, interview with Nick Mohammed on the YouTube channel. And then coming Monday, so by the time you're listening to this podcast, we will have another interview with Tahib Jamo, who plays Sam Obasanya on Ted Lasso. That'll be on YouTube as well. But aside from Ted Lasso, I also finally caught up and finished Midnight Mass, another great show that ranking right now is my number 2 of the year. So I know you're still yet to dive into that, but Jake, our old co-host, friend of the pod, is a big fan of Midnight Mass. Really enjoyed that. So that's I'm talking about Ted Lasso getting dark. Midnight Mass goes way darker, extremely different. But I really enjoyed that as well. And then one that I did not quite enjoy as much, which really snuck up on me, was the season finale of What If, the Marvel animated show, which I know we've talked about a little bit here and there. But that I had no idea until like that show comes out on Wednesdays. I had no idea until like Tuesday when they tweeted season finale of What If tomorrow. I was like, oh wait, what? This is the 9th episode. Again, this was not appointment television for me, but it was like I'm on my lunch break. I'm sitting down in front of the TV. Like I have 20 minutes, I have 30 minutes. I'm going to throw this on.
Right. But
maybe of those 9 episodes, only probably like 2 that I really enjoyed, and the rest were like meh to boring or bad in my opinion. Which I had high hopes for that just because of like the whole premise of it, the what if, the who knows like where this could go. And in the 2 episodes that I really enjoyed, it took it to those places, but the rest were just kind of either like minor tweaks or things that I didn't really care to see explored. But I will say the biggest surprise, which is also the least surprising thing considering the track record of the MCU, and this is not coming from an MCU hater, as anybody who listens to this knows, I very much enjoy the MCU. That this was supposed to be like the standalone, the spinoffs, the what if, like obviously it's the title, What If. So it's kind of like my impression was that it was like these isolated stories of just like, hey, this is like a thought experiment, and we're just going to think about what would happen if Loki was never adopted, and like that's the story. But so in this 9th and final episode of the season, a character from each of the previous 8 episodes all get recruited and brought into the same timeline, same universe of the multiverse, and are forced, it's the guardians of the multiverse. And so like these different universes have to come together to stop Ultron. It's like if Vision had become Ultron basically and has the Infinity Stones. But so it's like just the fact that like, oh, the one thing that I like about this is that it is like you can just watch any episode and it'll all make sense. But then it's like, wait a second, that's too good to be true. We're wrapping it all together and everybody has to be interconnected. And if you didn't watch 1 through 8, you're not going to get 9. So bit of a bummer.
Yeah. I have not watched it, obviously. I have kept up with it to a degree. One of my favorite podcasts and YouTube channels, they have been doing weekly recaps. So when I'm eating or getting ready for bed or something, I'll throw one of their videos on and listen and just kind of see what the situation is. They've been kind of lukewarm on it as well, like up and down. It seems kind of like, yeah, whatever, lesser, Marvel content as far as what I can tell. But yeah, so I suspect I will not be going back and watching this season now that it's all out.
I will, if you did just want to check out one or anything, the second, I can't remember if it was the second or the third one. I think it was second, which is the If T'Challa Were Star-Lord. That one's fun just because it is like I said, the most like, let's just make things as like different as possible, versus the first episode was literally like, it's the Captain Carter one, and it's basically the same premise of Captain America, the first Avenger, except with Captain Carter instead of Captain America. So that second one, it really gets weird. Thanos is an ally, and I don't know. It's that was fun and did what I hoped the other 8 episodes would have done. But other than that, I think you're fine to sit this one out.
And sit it out, I shall. I have sat it out.
You shall continue to sit it out. Well, let's get into some news from this week. Johnny, what's popping?
Well, we got some goodies here. There's no doubt about it. The biggest bomb, no pun intended, I think just dropped this afternoon, to be honest. And that is basically a confirmation and some extra details about a big project that we had already heard about recently. And that is Christopher Nolan's next film. It had been reported that he was planning on he had left Warner Brothers, gone to Universal Studios, and decided that he was going to make a film, a true story about J. Robert Oppenheimer, the big father of the atomic bomb. And this is going to be starring Cillian Murphy. That is confirmed. He had been reported to be attached to the project when the first report came out about it. But now we know he is not only going to be in it, but this is a starring vehicle for him, which is, I don't know if he's been in some smaller movies as the star, but he's never led a big project like this. So that's really exciting. Totally deserves it because he has been Christopher Nolan's, kind of lucky charm for a while now. He's been in every movie, not every movie, but virtually every movie since Batman Begins, over 15 years ago. So that's exciting. It's gotten a date as well. It's not too far off. It is going to be July 21st, 2023. Theatrical window, I believe, is confirmed for 100 days that he got. So this isn't going to be something where it's going to be on VOD 3 or 4 weeks later. It's going to be releasing on a streaming service at the same time. It is going to be in theaters, in IMAX, only on the big screen for over 3 months. So that's very, very bold and interesting, and kind of that was like the standard until like last year, and now that seems like such a exotic kind of
revolutionary concept.
Yeah, a big screen movie, being on the big screen only for a good period of time. So that is very cool. And we know, I mentioned IMAX. It is going to be shot in 65 millimeter film IMAX and 65 millimeter large format. So it's going to be shot entirely on film, of course, as Christopher Nolan is wont to do, and it's going to be shot entirely large format. It sounds like. So this is going to be a high resolution, big aspect ratio film. I'm certainly going to be checking that out in IMAX in a couple of years when it comes out. We also know on the production side of things, it is going to bring back Hoyte van Hoytema, who is the cinematographer that he has been with for a few projects now. He also shot Interstellar, Tenet, and Dunkirk. He got an Oscar nomination for Dunkirk. And he's also bringing back his editor, Jennifer Lame, who edited Tenet, and the Tenet composer as well, Oscar winner Ludwig Göransson, who won the Oscar for Black Panther. So he had to part ways with Hans Zimmer and editor Lee Smith when they could not work on Tenet because they were doing other things. I believe Lee Smith was working on 1917, among other things. And then Hans Zimmer, of course, was doing Dune and Top Gun and No Time to Die and some other things. So that is interesting. He's keeping them, with him. And this is all sounds really exciting. I mean, it's less than 2 years away, which is really cool. I know Tenet, of course, already came out over a year ago at this point, but it doesn't feel that far away just because of the pandemic and whatnot, at least to me. And that was definitely a mixed movie, I would say, for a lot of people. Not, one of his less critically acclaimed films, one of his less audience friendly films, I would say. And even though it has grown on me quite a bit, I did not like it the first time I saw it, but I have grown to like it quite a bit more. And I think that this is going to be a really juicy, meaty project, not only for Christopher Nolan as a filmmaker, but also Cillian Murphy. Again, he's starring in it, and it seems like, based on a true story. He's adapting it from a Pulitzer-winning novel, and it's a major. I mean, this is a major historical event, and it's going to be epic. It's going to be thrilling. I imagine this is going to be a huge awards contender. Dunkirk certainly was. I believe they got 8 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture and Best Director. So if this hits, I think it's very likely to be in that same ballpark. So I can't wait.
Yeah, I want to go back to something you said a bit ago. I kept waiting for my point to jump in to try and throw it back, but you were just on
Stay
a roll.
out of the way.
I decided to just let you finish. But looking at while you were talking, Cillian Murphy's IMDb page, and kind of forgotten already that he was in A Quiet Place Part 2. And you said that he hasn't really starred in like a big blockbuster. And I don't know if we would consider obviously Emily Blunt is the star there.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely another supporting.
But that is still like a big blockbuster, a recent thing that shows that he obviously he was one of the better parts of that movie, that I really, really enjoyed. So to kind of, if anyone was like, oh, I don't know if, I know he's been Christopher Nolan's like bit guy. I don't know if he's got the chops for the big role. Obviously we saw just a couple months ago in A Quiet Place Part 2 that is in fact the case. So I think that's a great decision, and I'm super excited to see it as well. And I know that I believe it, I don't know the handle of the Twitter user, but someone pointed out to you on Twitter that for anyone who is worried about Christopher Nolan straying from his roots, that Robert Oppenheimer does in fact have a former girlfriend who killed herself before he got married to his wife at the time, I guess. So for anyone who is looking to see how Marion Cotillard would fit into this movie, we now know. So you can rest easy.
Yeah, the tragic wife trope will not be lost. Even though this is based on a true story, he found the
That was
truth
probably
in
when
it.
he was researching, when his team was researching potential stories. Like, it has to, if it's a true story, I'll do it, but it has to have a dead wife in there somewhere.
I will say this is another interesting tidbit as well. I believe it was reported or said Robert Pattinson at the wrap party for Tenet actually got, as a gift for Christopher Nolan, got him a Oppenheimer book with like quotes, like writings from Oppenheimer himself. So it's interesting. I wonder if he had already decided, or if he'd been thinking about it before he got that gift, or if Robert Pattinson somehow had a hand in like
if
compelling him
is the one who pushed it. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's going to be, and also to Cillian Murphy's credit as well, I have not seen it myself, but I know Peaky Blinders is a very popular show that he is, the lead in and the star of. So he's definitely no stranger to big, meaty, roles like that. So, but as far as film, I think, this is going to be a big, I would imagine, people are already saying this on Twitter. I would imagine just on paper that he could get an Oscar nomination out of this. He's never been nominated, of course. So that would be really cool. I think he's very much overlooked in that regard, again, as far as, sizable roles and everything, but something to look forward to. Mark it on the calendar, July 21st, 2023.
Well, I know what else you are desperately looking forward to, Johnny, and that is the latest news out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that an Agatha Harkness spinoff dark comedy series is in development from WandaVision head writer Jack Schaefer. And of course, Catherine Hahn will be returning to play Agatha. As we know that it was Agatha all along, the evil witch from WandaVision. WandaVision seemed to wrap up her story. She's still around. It's not like she was killed. But so this could be some sort of prequel series, whether it's, looking back at, we saw that one flashback where Agatha gained her powers from the other witches in the coven, or if this is just some other her adventures within where Scarlet Witch has trapped her. But we know there's going to be a comedy series, like the spinoff series, and then also that whatever this contract is with Catherine Hahn, it will allow her to appear in multiple future MCU projects. So I will say she was one of the better parts of that show.
Until she wasn't.
Until, yes. But like when basically until it led up to like the finale.
Right.
She was.
I mean, I can certainly give you that. There's no arguing that.
If you had to pick anything from WandaVision to continue beyond like obviously just the character of Scarlet Witch moving forward, like
apart from the rest of the show, yeah.
Well, like no, like that's a given. Like we know that like that Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda is going to be in the rest of the MCU. If you had to pick something, like I don't know. People will probably campaign for a Jimmy Woo movie.
Exactly. They've already discussed like that might be a thing.
But I mean, just it's a no-brainer if you had to pick something that based on the fan reception that like people were just like posting that Agatha All Along song literally like nonstop on social media. Like there were plenty of the Catherine Hahn winks like that. Like people just could not get enough of her. So that groan seems to tell me that you were not one of those people, John.
I'm not gonna be. I'm gonna be the bad guy. All right, I'm gonna be the bad guy. I'm gonna be the negative Nancy here. I hate this. I hate this idea. I think it sucks. I'm sorry. Like I get it. People love Catherine Hahn. She's a fantastic actor. No disrespect. But this is like, so this is what happens with these things and the fans. Like something is good. Something is good in its role, in its doing what it was designed to do, whether it's a supporting part, what have you. And then they force it and it like becomes a meme, right? And it becomes like this kind of like online social media kind of sensation. I mean, Jimmy Woo was kind of like a thing like that with his card trick and all that. Catherine Hahn, of course, is Agatha Harkness, especially once it was aware and that she was bad and she became the villain that even, skyrocketed with the song, as you mentioned. But it gets to a point where like this show, we're already talking about 2 potential like spin-off shows or projects based on characters in this show. And I just feel how many MCU projects did we get this year? How many are we getting this year total? Like 10, including between the shows and the movies?
WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, Hawkeye. So those are 5 TV shows. And that because Miss Marvel moved to 2022, plus Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, and Spider-Man. So 9 total. Okay. I will say it was Disney has just released their award site, their for your consideration site, which I will say that it includes TV shows and films. So I assume it was like an Emmys and Oscars hybrid. Mm-hmm. But of the 9 projects that they have listed there, 5 of them are Marvel projects. So that was kind of a bummer.
Yeah. But yeah, my point here is that they have already talked about oversaturation, right? Like we've already talked about, burnout, fatigue.
What was the stat that I shared with you last week? I think I in the group, it was from, I think Fandom reported it, that there were 31 Marvel projects in the works right now.
In active development. Yeah. So I get it. People like these things. You like them. I just wish that we could just let them exist, let them be what they are and enjoy them, and then not like, and of course we can't blame the fans entirely. Like they're not the ones green lighting or deciding to move ahead with this show. It's the suits that are doing it. But I just have already been worried about this, like becoming exhausting, where these 10 to 12 projects per year. I understand for the big superhero characters, because you want to build them up, you want to expand on them, you want to flesh them out, and prepare them, for Avengers movies, crossovers, all that, because that's kind of where we're heading and where we're at this point. But wait, like, why do we need an Agatha Harkness show? Like, why do we need this character to have episodes and hours of development and backstory? And I guarantee that this is going to tie, like they're going to directly tie this into WandaVision. Like it wouldn't surprise me if somehow they have, Elizabeth Olsen make a cameo or something like that. Like, it's just, it gets to a point where I just feel like, again, I've made the comparison before, like it's a factory, like assembly line where like they latch onto something and then they wrap it up in a little package, exactly like how they package everything else, and they shove it out there, and it's, however many episodes, 6, 7, 8, whatever, and for however many weeks, and then that's over. Like, I just feel that we can, maybe check out other superhero characters, or add other things for more like significant roles where you're going to actually be able to do more with them. Whereas this, it just feels like, oh, well, Catherine Hahn got nominated for an Emmy, and people like the show got nominated for Emmy. So let's just do more of that with this other character, because we don't need a movie for Agatha Harkness, but we have Disney Plus now. We need to get subscribers. That's the thing. Like, this is not a purely obviously artistic or like creative choice. They are doing it because, oh, well, we have a streaming service that needs to, continue to get streams and continue to get subscribers. So let's throw something else on there that from something else that people liked. Like, that's what irks me the most. So
I would say that this is a prime example of the art versus content discussion debate no of filmmaking and television right now. But this is, I don't know, kind of a separate thought, but kind of connects. In our group chat this week, we were discussing, I sent I think it was 3 or 4 new Star Wars books were announced this week. And one of them was like basically filling in every single little bit of detail from like the end of the original trilogy to like kind of lead up to Rise of Skywalker, using like Lando Calrissian's story and like his daughter that we met in Rise of Skywalker. And then it all, like, the premise sounded interesting, but then it got all the way up to being like, and they have to find Rey, the granddaughter of Palpatine. And it's like that, like, what I'm trying to get at here is that like they're making these stories, but there's only like so much that they can tell. And so it's just like overbearing and like beating a dead horse. And like, I feel like they're going to like,
it just feels very contrived, and
it's like, they're going to like paint themselves into a corner and then like try and like milk every little bit out of something that really was like only this big to start.
And that's
and
the
I
thing
feel like
too.
That's the same thing in MCU right now.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, those are really good points. And I think that's the thing, is like, I did like Catherine Hahn in that role, like, and as that character, as what she was. Like, I feel like if we get a whole show of that, like, I'm gonna like it less. Like, I'm gonna like her probably less in the role. And WandaVision, I feel like, doesn't really benefit necessarily from expanding like more on that character. And as we're discussing this will be the last thing I say about it. It's being rumored from one of the scooper people on Twitter, Daniel Rickman. He says, supposedly a solo series is in development at Disney Plus for Monica Rambeau, Tiana Paris's character in WandaVision. So yeah, I'm sick of this already. Good news is, people that want to see it, they can watch it. People like me that don't want to see it don't have to watch it. So everyone wins at the end of the day.
I will say that could be, you were talking about exploring other heroes. We barely scratched the surface with her there. So if that is something,
but she's supposed to be in Captain Marvel, right?
Right. She should be in the Marvel. So I would assume that we've got Miss Marvel to get us warmed up for that. Then we'll have the Marvels, and then we'll have the Monica Rambeau show afterwards, probably. So
yeah. All right.
Well, I never want to watch anything bad, so hopefully everything we just said is wrong, and it turns out to be absolutely fantastic.
Hopefully this is the best series of all time, because I would write.
And I also feel like saying that at the end of this discussion saves us from anyone coming back and clipping this if it actually ends up being great. and they're like, Zach and Johnny hated it back on October 8th, 2021, when it finally comes out in like 2024. But
respect.
Let's move on to something that is not that far away and is a guaranteed hit, because it's Dune. We've talked about it ad nauseum at this point. We are 2 weeks away. 2 weeks from today, you'll be on your 4th viewing, Johnny? Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, actually, yeah, be close.
Well, we got a final trailer. We don't have to spend too long on this, but all I will say is that any excitement that I thought I had, this just further, it's just like exponential growth at this point. I know it's impossible to ever catch up to you and your excitement, but for myself, I'm pretty excited. Getting to see little bit, the way that they keep revealing like little tiny bits, but I never feel like it's, okay, you've shown me too much, I don't want to see anymore or anything like that. I'm still like on Danny's hook, and I just can't wait to get into that theater and check it out. So the trailer just reminded me, as if I needed reminding, how thrilled I am to check this out in 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm certainly, yeah. I mean, my hype is through the roof. Can't really. I mean, I feel like it can't go any higher, but I feel like every day somehow it does, because more and more reactions come out, more and more reviews, and they're all 90% glowing. So really exciting. This final trailer, I think, was the perfect last kick in the butt for the marketing. As tickets went on sale this week, just to remind everyone, get everyone's attention. Zendaya was retweeting it. Zendaya was posting it on her Instagram to her 100 million followers. So I also saw Chalamet post on Instagram, Josh Brolin, Rebecca Ferguson. So yeah, this was like the last big thing that they can show people and say, hey, reminder, 2 weeks, you can go get your tickets now. I just think Warner Brothers and Legendary, they've just crushed this. Like they've really, I've been so impressed the last 3 months with how they've rolled this thing out. And so far it's certainly paying dividends, especially overseas where box office is already overperforming and doing really well. So yeah, I love this trailer. I loved seeing Denis' name, acclaimed director Denis Villeneuve, and the little pull quote they had in there, and just the aesthetic of it, the music and the new shots, here and there that we got were just really cool. So yeah, I just know I'm going to lose it when I actually get to sit down in the theater and watch it. But I'm just waiting. Like I'm not even like desperate for these 2 weeks to go back. I'm just trying to slow down and enjoy the ride.
Well, it's funny because we're getting more and more, like you said, obviously more and more reactions as people are seeing it. And it's like now people within at least within our internet circle, I'll say, that we interact with, it's not just like randoms, but like people who are in New York or in LA or in certain guilds and able to check it out. Mm-hmm. And I, not to say that I'm better than them because I've read the book, but I am. It's funny to me to hear the people who are like, wow, Rebecca Ferguson really had a bigger role than I expected. And it's like, oh, if only you'd read this book that's been around for what, like 60 years, 50 years, maybe you would have known. But again, I don't want to, that's all said in jest, because I am not trying to like gatekeep in the slightest. I want as many people to see this as possible so we can get part two.
Yeah, but no,
I just think that's a funny reaction when it is anyone who's read the book is like, yeah, she's like the second main character basically to Paul.
Yeah, I mean it is funny to see some of those because anyone that has read it does know that she is huge. Honestly, people might get the idea based on the marketing and the way they plotted this out that Zendaya is like the female.
I feel like the Zendaya, and they've probably done that intentionally because
the
Zendaya hive that doesn't give a shit about sci-fi will go and see this movie, and then she'll be in like Ana de Armas in No Time to Die, and then they'll be like, what the fuck?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But I just love it. I'm loving these reactions. We're gonna get more here in a few moments out of New York Film Festival. So but yeah, and last thing I will say, have to mention it because we are talking about Dune, and it is today when we're recording this. Happy birthday to legendary author and creator of Dune, Frank Herbert. I'm a huge fan of the first book, and I'm reading the second one right now, and I love it just as much as the first one, if not more. And of course, like I'm obsessed with the movie, and I haven't even seen it yet. So it has inspired so much as well. Like it cannot be understated. Star Wars directly pulled from it. Game of Thrones directly pulled from it. It's just a number of other things. So it all goes back to one guy out in the dunes, and I think it was Oregon, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. So rest in peace, and carry it on.
Well, we are going to carry it on right now, and that is by talking about another new trailer that we got. We'd seen one clip previously, but now we have a full trailer for Red Rocket, which we will be checking out, or at least I will be checking out in just a few weeks at Film Fest 919. It is on my schedule. I know I tweeted that out earlier. I'll give a quick shout. Let me pull it up. Just so people at home can know what to expect in the coming weeks from us at Film Fest 919. I will be checking out King Richard, Petite Maman, Mass, Red Rocket, The Worst Person in the World, The French Dispatch, and Spencer. And Johnny will be checking out at least Come On, maybe something else in between Dune screenings. But anyway, first trailer for Red Rocket. It's from director Sean Baker, who's done The Florida Project and Tangerine. I've only seen The Florida Project, but was a big fan of that movie. But what did you think here? It's Mikey Saber is a washed-up porn star who returns to his small Texas hometown. Not that anyone really wants him back.
So we'd heard about this. It premiered at Cannes Film Festival over the summer. Got really good reviews. Kind of came out of nowhere. Simon Rex, who I really only know and is probably known best from like Scary Movie 3. And I'm like I was very interested just hearing about him, but to now see the footage, it looks hilarious. He looks very funny. He looks like very like so believable. And it almost has like this kind of Adam Sandler, like an Uncut Gems, like energy where it's just like, he's like an idiot and he like cannot stay out of trouble, but like you can't take your eyes off him and you empathize with him anyway. And I have not seen Sean Baker's previous films either. I haven't seen Tangerine or The Florida Project. They're both on my list, but this looks definitely lighter than those other two. I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of like decent drama in here.
I was gonna say it has a similar like stylistic look to it as The Florida Project, but obviously that's much more wholesome and like uplifting, I guess, sort of uplifting, but it's like more drama, more real world stuff versus this, which seems to be obviously much more the comedic route. So I'll be interested to like be able to see those and compare them without having seen any of his other work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I would like to, I guess I'll have to figure out, because this comes out in December, I think.
Yeah, so it's not until December. So we'll have an early advantage getting to see it before in a couple weeks in October.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, no, this looks very good. I love the poster as well. The poster is really funny. So looking forward to it.
And I believe as a part of Film Fest 919 that Sean Baker and who was the director and one of the co-writers, the other co-writer, Chris Burgos, I can't remember who's who. One of them will be at the film festival in person and the other one will be there virtually. And so that'll be like a Q&A after the film.
Yeah, so Sean Baker, I believe, is zooming in or whatever it may be.
So that'll be exciting to get a little more insight there as well. But a couple other clips before we move on to No Time to Die. HBO Max was just popping off on a random Tuesday morning, 5 a.m. We wake up and there's 3 brand new clips to check out. First up, most exciting, I would say, or at least, I would say most exciting. We had not seen anything other than some photos. First teaser for House of the Dragon, the Targaryen-focused Game of Thrones prequel series. We get a look at some live footage. We get to see what the Targaryens are looking like 200 years before the mainline Game of Thrones. And this is getting me excited again. We got not a date, but it's 2022, so it'll be within the next year. And this is one of those things where, like, yes, I'm very excited about it. I'm going to check it out. Obviously, I love Game of Thrones. We were just talking about it last week, regardless of the final episode, but to kind of actually see something, not more than just a photo, reminded me like just how good the majority of that was and how excited and promising this seems to be.
Yeah, this really dropped at the perfect time for me because, as I stated on the last episode, I'm finally getting into Game of Thrones again. I have gotten over the phobia of revisiting it. And my girlfriend is watching it for the first time with me. I'm showing it to her. So she's really loving it. We flew through season 2 most recently. We're getting ready to start season 3. So my hype and enjoyment of the world is certainly back in full force. And this was a welcome surprise to see. It looks. I had been excited for this show anyway. I was definitely not one of those people that I've seen a lot online really like, I'm not gonna watch this. Are you kidding me? After what happened in Game of Thrones, like no. First off, I've been saying all along, those people, as soon as the show actually comes out, are gonna just automatically
Sunday night 9 p.m. Their HBO is gonna be on. Don't worry.
Yeah, they're gonna cave in right away, unless the show is like terrible. But I really don't see that happening. There's just no. I was not in that mindset. I was like, it's a different team, it's a different group of writers, different director, showrunner, all that. D&D are nowhere to be found, which is great. And of course, this is also narrative is entirely already in the fiction, like in the canon. There's no open-endedness. George R.R. Martin doesn't need to come up with anything else. So that in that respect, you have an end point. You don't have to make anything up, which is great. So I've been excited the entire time. I think they have a great cast together as well. And I was very, very pleased with this teaser. I think it looks amazing. It looks just as good as Game of Thrones from a production standpoint. And I'm sure HBO has even more money to throw at it now and are more willing to throw in money, especially on a first season. So I can't wait. 2022. We don't have an exact date yet, but as soon as it comes out, I'm going to be locked in Sunday night, popping it off. And that's why part of why I wanted to get back into Game of Thrones and watch it with my girlfriend is so that we could both be ready to watch this show when it comes out. And it looks like it'll be worth the preparation.
Definitely. And like I said, 3 clips happened. So moving on to the next one, the second most exciting was the Peacemaker teaser, a little scene that we got to see there. I'll defer to you on this as the go-to DC guy and the big. I mean, I really enjoyed Suicide Squad as well, so I feel like I can talk about this. But Peacemaker, what'd you think? John Cena in action, in full uniform, in the diner.
Yeah, in full action in the diner. I mean, it was funny. Like I thought it was funny, cute little clip, just basically of him showing up at the diner and meeting with largely the same crew that we saw in the film, at least. I can't remember what her name is. James Gunn's wife. She played one of the people in the office with Viola Davis. And then of course you have Steve Agee, who played King Shark, did the body for King Shark. He was there as well with his glasses and his long hair. So they're funny. They were funny in the movie. They're funny here now. I like their banter with Peacemaker and John Cena's he's so funny. Like, I think he is legit like a great comedic actor, and he did well with the more dramatic parts of the Suicide Squad as well. So I'm excited to see more of this show. I thought it was just a little right amount to kind of tease us, and we know DC fandom is right around the corner, so we're going to be getting a full-blown teaser with a lot more footage, a better taste of the tone and show overall, I think.
And it's actually coming so soon as well that we don't have an exact date, but it's January 2022. So knowing that that's just like right around the corner by the time we get through this heavenly month of October, and then it'll be holiday season, and then it's Peacemaker time. So it's really something that we know that, like, due to the pandemic and stuff, that they were able to create the whole thing during that time. So the turnaround from Suicide Squad to Peacemaker is really impressive. And the final clip of this trio, nothing we need to dive too deep into, as we are only just a week away at this point. Season 3 of Succession, what I can imagine will be one of the first scenes that we see. It's a little clip of Nicholas Braun and Jeremy Strong, who are obviously cousin Greg, and Kendall Roy, as they're leaving the press conference. This was my interpretation. It seems like it's literally right after season 2 ends. They're leaving the press conference where Kendall drops the bomb, and they're getting into the car and kind of just figuring out, okay, we really just did this. Are you in or are you out? Like, how do we move forward from here? And again, we don't have to spend too much time on it. It wasn't super revolutionary, but again, just something small to kind of whet your appetite before we get there next Sunday night.
Yeah, I can't believe it's right around the corner. I can't wait. This was a funny, just Greg being an idiot. Like, no comment.
Greg, you don't have to say no comment.
No comment. You can just not comment. So yeah,
And then he
the,
continues to say it.
yes, as they're getting in. So I liked what Kendall was kind of saying to God, what's her name? Starts with a K.
Katarina. No, is it
It's like Eastern
the assistant?
European. Yeah, but he's basically saying, hey, you got to be on with this. Like, there's no reason for you to stay. And she's just kind of like, I don't know. It seems like she could go either way. I hadn't really considered what she might do, or like that was even going to be a situation. But I'm excited. I just can't wait. I'm so ready for the new season to kick off.
Perfect timing for me. Like I said, just finishing up Ted. This will be my new appointment viewing. Everyone's going to be talking about it on a weekly basis. So,
oh yeah,
super, super excited for that. But let's get into the meat of the episode. Let's talk No Time to Die, Daniel Craig's final James Bond film.
Have you ever flown one of these things before?
Nope.
James, now your enemy is my enemy. What is it?
You don't know what this is?
If we don't do this, there will be nothing left to save.
Come on, Bond. Only in theaters. Rated PG-13.
So, obviously, starring Daniel Craig, we've got Lea Seydoux, Ana de Armas, Lashana Lynch, Rami Malek, and the usual suspects: Ben Whishaw, Ray Fiennes, let's see, Naomi Harris, all of those intelligence folks. But really, really, really solid cast here. Everybody, with the exception of one, which we'll get into, is just like stellar, I would say.
Yeah.
But as we kind of lightly discussed off the top, that we both really, really enjoyed this movie. I think obviously there was a lot at stake here, not within the movie, but about the movie. You've got this long delay leading up to it. You've got people begging for months and months, put it on Apple, let somebody buy it. Like, we just need to get this out there. So the hype had been building for so long. People were so excited to see this. And I will say, I was at one point, like last fall, just like, let's just get it out there. We need to see it. But I'm so glad that they did not do that, because seeing this, like we're recording on Friday. So seeing it last night, opening night in IMAX, in a crowded theater, like, I couldn't have imagined watching this movie for the first time on my couch at home.
Absolutely not. God, that would have been hell. Because
I don't know if I'd say hell, but just not quite as good as IMAX in the theater.
I mean, it would be laughable by comparison. And I'm not like one of those people like, you have to watch every movie at the theater. You're bad if you watch it at home. But like, it is one of those big screen experiences. And I can't imagine watching it any other way, at least for the first time. So, yeah, no, this was something I had been looking forward to, but I think as we got closer, I got more excited. I thought more about the film. I thought more about Daniel Craig and how this was ending his tenure. And that made me like kind of, not emotional necessarily, but it had me thinking about that. And I think it adds to it because this is 5 years, I think, or is it 5 or 6 years, I think, removed 6 years removed from the last film. I mean, he might as well not have even have been Bond, right? Like, he's been gone for so long out of the role on the big screen. So it was nice to come back and explore it again and see him and other familiar characters, as you mentioned, and just get it all wrapped up and have his story come to a close. I thought it was really satisfying and fun and what you want out of a James Bond movie, I felt.
Right. I mean, I feel like there's different types of spy movies. There's different types of James Bond movies as well. But like with this Daniel Craig era, you seem to know, like, it's had its highs and its lows, but I don't know. I'm thinking like comparing a Bond to a Bourne or to a Mission Impossible or something. Like, it's not going to be as gritty as a Bourne movie. It's not going to be as outrageous stunt heavy as a Mission Impossible movie, but like, you've got plenty of big explosive set pieces. You've got this one even more so than any of the previous Craig films. Like, true emotional value. You've got strong relationships between the characters, and this one was very character driven, rather than, I mean, obviously there was like a big complex plot, which we'll get into, but it was very focused on the characters more so than saving the world, even though that obviously is a huge aspect here.
Right.
So I don't remember where I started with that statement, but just talking, just I kind of lost the train.
Sometimes I start talking and I don't know where it's going.
I just hope that I find it along the way. But what I did find are some Rotten Tomatoes scores: 84% critic score, 89% audience score. Me, your boy, loved this one. 94 out of 100 for me. This is my number 2 movie of the year at this point. I was very, I don't know. I want to see this again. Johnny and I were talking before we record. We're both planning to see this again. Yeah. And I maybe after that initial excitement wears off, that might drop a little bit, but I left the theater and I sent you guys like all caps, "Oh my God, Bond is so awesome." Like this, yeah. I was fired up about this because it, as you tweeted, you cried. I shed a tear as well. Didn't expect that going into a James Bond movie, but it had the action, it had the emotion, it had a good enough story. Like I was able to, there were certain like points where it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be this complex, but like it was never a detriment to me. The only weak part was the Rami Malek villain character, which we can get into as we kind of break it down in more detail. But I really, really loved it. I left there with the same sort of feelings after having seen that I had after seeing Skyfall, which is another one that I loved. So 94 out of 100 for me. Johnny, do you have a score here?
I'd probably give it like right around like a 77, 78.
Okay, still high for the Johnny Sobchak factor, but not quite as high as mine. But I'll allow it. Yeah,
you went super high. I mean, like no, like
well, because like
my disrespect or anything.
I when I do mine, it's like because I keep track. Like when I write my Letterboxd reviews, I'll put a number score, and I also have it in my notes app. So beyond just like well, like obviously if you've got a 4-star, that's going to be somewhere around 80 if you just do like 20 points per star. And then I just kind of like look at my 2021 ranked list and I'm like, okay, so I liked this more than that, but I didn't like it as much as that. And then I pull up what those 2 scores were, and then I figure out like where number wise it should rank. So yeah, that was mine was like the only thing I've liked more than this year was Judas, and that was a 95. And then so
well, that's the thing. You've seen more movies than me, I think. I've seen
this is my 40th, I think.
Really? Okay. So I have seen this year for 2021 films. I've seen let's see, 32. So I've seen less, but you had it higher in your top ranking. I had it a little bit low. I would say it's probably like right around a 5 for me, like number 5 on the year, I think. I mean, it was a great, I mean, as far as blockbusters, the only one I'd put it behind is the Suicide Squad. Because I did like that one a little bit more overall. I thought that one was a little bit less messy. That one clearly has a singular vision of one man, James Gunn, writing it and directing it. This is a little bit more scattershot as far as the plotting. It is very long. But it is, as far as blockbuster big budget filmmaking goes, this is pretty damn good. Like there's thought, there's intent, there's artistic merit. Cinematography is gorgeous. Linus Sengren, who was nominated for La La Land and also shot First Man. Just beautiful. The sound is fantastic. The effects, especially the practical effects and like the mix that they do is awesome. And that, of course, that all helps in support of the performances and what's going on with Daniel Craig in the role. And he's absolutely like the centerpiece. He is carrying it on his shoulders 100%. And he is just the most captivating he's ever been. I mean, he really adds a emotional, depthful, element to it that I don't think any other James Bond actor certainly has had, but even performance, even from his other best performances in things like Skyfall or Casino Royale.
Definitely. Well, let's lay down the plot before we get started too deep here. In No Time to Die, Bond has left active service and is enjoying a tranquil life in Jamaica. His peace is short-lived when his old friend Felix Leiter from the CIA turns up asking for help. The mission to rescue a kidnapped scientist turns out to be far more treacherous than expected, leading Bond onto the trail of a mysterious villain armed with dangerous new technology. So I would say we'll go ahead and throw out the spoiler warning. This is the final Bond film, so you may have some preconceived notions already, or the final Daniel Craig Bond film. But I want to be able to talk about it in detail here and not have anyone get upset about that. So first off, I want to talk about that opening sequence. This was probably the longest in, I don't know. Again, I kept talking about us doing a rewatch of the Craig Bond movies, but we never did. So nothing is fresh to me. But we get from that the movie starts with Madeline Swan's character, with Lea Seydoux' character, Madeline Swan, in a flashback. And then we go to the present day with her and Bond. And there's the whole giant set piece that you see in the trailer through the Italian cliffside. Well, first we get like a little backstory between them, and they're living happily on the run, not on the run, but basically like undercover. And then we get the big set piece, the chase through the cliffside, and him sending her away because he thinks that she betrayed him. And that's probably 25 minutes at least. And then we finally get the like traditional animated Bond sequence with No Time to Die by Billie Eilish playing. What did you think of the whole opening sequence?
Yeah, the opening, as you mentioned, it goes on for quite a long time, and that, you know, this is the longest Bond movie by far, and you feel it. I mean, the opening kind of establishes that early on, that they're taking their time, that they're packing a lot into this. But I thought it was awesome. People had really hyped it up. They're like, this is the best opening of any Bond film. And I didn't really feel that necessarily. Like, I think, you know, like Skyfall to me, I think was better than this as far as the opening goes. I thought that was like just amazing action and Roger Deakins, the way he shoots it, and how it's so dramatic when he gets shot and he falls off the train. And then of course it leads into Skyfall by Adele, which is arguably the greatest of any of these theme songs. It's pretty hard to top that. This was still really good. I mean, it had action, it had drama, it had a very easy, kind of breezy build into the drama, and then it kind of pops off in a big way. And then, of course, Billie Eilish. I hadn't listened to the song probably since before the pandemic, when it first came out, when I was getting excited to watch it, like last spring, of 2020. And so because I think I just didn't want to think about it or like really kind of get myself excited. Now hearing it though, with the title sequence, and of course in the context of the movie, with Hans Zimmer's beautiful arrangement and composition and everything, it was a great opening. It was a really good way of, I think, setting the tone for what we were going to get. And it should be noted, Josh Martin, one of the contributors for the site, one of our good friends, he also noted in his review on Letterboxd, and what I think ended up on the site as well, if you want to go check that out, is this is the first Bond opening that at least he has seen or can remember where it doesn't open with Bond. It doesn't start with him. It starts with someone else. And that is Madeline Swan as a child, getting her backstory. And that also includes Rami Malek's character, Safin. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't expect that, but I thought it was cool, kind of off-putting, but also does a good job of, again, setting you into the mindset of what the rest of the story is going to be like.
Definitely. Well, quick jump back to Billie Eilish. As a big Billie fan, I had listened, in fact, to this song quite a few times since its release, but seeing it on the big screen was completely different. With the opening, it really brought it to life more. And quick aside, the Billie Eilish documentary on Apple TV Plus, there was like a sequence where they were really like cramming and rushing to get this song done, her and her brother Phineas, because they had like a very tight window to finish it, get it sent off to them to have it in the movie and everything. And It's so funny now to think about, like, oh, they've actually had all the time in the world to get this movie, or to get this song finished for a movie that got delayed 8,000 times. But in the end, it all worked out, and it was a great opening sequence. But I want to talk about, before we talk about like the plot overall, like what the actual specifics of the plot were. I think it, as someone who just said that they love Skyfall and that they really like the Daniel Craig Bond movies, I have to come clean that I had never ended up seeing Spectre. So before this movie, I was like multiple times like, tonight's the night I'm gonna watch Spectre. I've got to do it, and I just like kept having stuff pop up. I was busy, so I had to read like a little Everything You Need to Know Before No Time to Die, which was maybe like 5 paragraphs. So it wasn't anything extensive. I can watch Spectre and I'm not going to know it's not like it's spoiled Spectre for me, I would say.
Yeah.
Other than like, obviously I know that the Christoph Waltz character will be captured at the end. But anyway, without that knowledge, I still feel like I was perfectly fine understanding this movie. I didn't have any questions about like, who is that? How do they know him? How does this work?
Yeah.
They did a very good job of like, I'm sure having seen Spectre, I would have a lot more appreciation of some smaller details that I may have missed, but you can see this movie. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it because the other movies are very good, at least 2 of the other ones. But if you haven't seen every single Bond movie, every Daniel Craig Bond movie, if you're maybe haven't seen them in a while, but you have seen them, you're still going to be able to understand this. They do a good job of making this function as a standalone movie, as well as being interconnected in the overarching Daniel Craig Bond universe.
Agreed. I think we mentioned this. Maybe I think we said this before the show, but it is clearly an episodic entry. Like it is building on what has come before. But I think even if you haven't seen the others, you just have a vague awareness of the character of James Bond, of the franchise, maybe. And if you're, if you consume pop culture in any capacity, you are aware. I think you can still enjoy it. Your mileage will vary, of course, compared to someone that has seen all of them and knows each and every character and all that, but it's still a fun, enjoyable action spy thriller.
Right. Well, getting a little bit more specific in the plot, we've got, I don't even know if I'll be able to just off the top of my head recount all of the different intricacies of it, but
you cannot. I guarantee.
The big plot, the big enemy is, like you said, Rami Malek as Safin. He's an eco-terrorist. He's got this biological weapon which uses people's DNA, and I don't remember the exact term, nanobots, nanoparticle, some sort of like minute technology that can be sprayed on you in like a vapor, and it only attacks the person whose DNA it's programmed to, or someone related to them. But this terrorist receives this, he steals it from MI6. It was supposed to be a tool that they could use, but he's now mass producing it and going to expose the world to it in order to get his revenge. I guess it's very sort of vague as to his personal motivation. I mean, we know that his family was killed, but he's trying to get back at the entire world because of that, I guess. But basically, if Bond and co can't stop him, then this vapor will be released into the world. And as you get it, it passes on to different people. And if you were to like, if I were to have it and then interact with Johnny, then it would like pass to him. And so it's like a virus, which again, I can't remember if this was off before the show.
Topical.
Right. I know Josh talks about it in his review. And we heard it like back last March when it was first delayed, before we knew the extent of like the like
story.
Coronavirus on its own is obviously enough to like cause delays. But at first it was like, oh, this is like a sensitivity delay to try and, because it's like, this is something that people are relevant. It's like relevant people are dealing with right now, sort of. And so we don't want to be like, we don't want to be on the nose and bring up like bad feelings. But so that was like, okay, so we're just going to delay it to November because of that, not because like everything is going to shut down for a whole year. But so now, having seen the movie, I can definitely see why that was a theory at the time. But plot as a whole, yay, nay, where did you fall on the spectrum here?
Yeah, I mean, it's I mean, listen to what you just described. I mean, it's certainly kind of silly, like kind of like a throwback to the old James Bond. Like
it's honestly, to borrow from one of my all-time favorite cinematic franchises, it feels Fast and the Furious-ish. In terms of like giant global catastrophe that they have to stop, that isn't necessarily like it is explained like how it functions, which is more than you can say about most Fast movies, that like it's just kind of like it's gonna happen. But I would say more so than that, like that plot to me, that's serviceable. It sets everything in motion. I'm not gonna dig too deep into that, but the plot points that were more engaging for me was, like I said earlier, the characters and their relationships, and seeing Bond and Madeline, and spoiler alert, their child that we find out that they've had, and seeing Bond reunite with MI6 and return as a 00 agent, seeing him with Nomi, Lashana Lynch's character, with Paloma, Ana de Armas's character, with Felix again. So just like those kind of relationships there, and the storylines that accompanied those, rather than like the overarching storyline of Save the World, was what I really, really was invested in here.
Yeah, I just like I cared about the characters, obviously, and so like that was what I was most focused on. Everything else that was going on, it didn't seem like, you really don't even know what the hell's going on until the end of the movie. Like, and by the time you get there, it feels so like, even like not even, it's cliche and like also unclear. Like you get to the villain's lair, and then he's kind of like explaining like what he plans to do, and like Bond realizes what he plans to do, and then like they resolve it, like they try to resolve it like in the next 20 minutes, and they do. Like up to that point in the movie, 2.5 hours in the movie, basically, you don't really know what the hell Rami Malek's character wants, or what his end game is. So that, to that degree, I think that Rami Malek, his weakness as an antagonist is tied into the motivation, which is unclear and also kind of goofy, and like not really reasonable. Like I get that he's a villain, so he's not gonna be reasonable anyway, but like it just wasn't really gelling for me in the same way that like Le Chiffre as a villain in Casino Royale, or
and I will say
in Skyfall.
Also, Rami Malek in general, like people were surprised, myself included, at as big of a marketing piece as Ana de Armas was in this movie, that she was in like she had like 7 minutes of screen time maybe, which like I would love to see as much of her as possible, but she came in, did her part, was excellent, and then the story moved on. Right. But Rami Malek, honestly, I would say is not in this much more than Ana de Armas. Like he doesn't have a ton of screen time here to be the big bad, Yeah,
no, he doesn't have much screen time at all. And you don't necessarily need the most screen time as a villain. I mean, look at Hannibal Lecter or something, if I want to use like a crazy example. But like, I don't know. I just felt it's not all on Rami Malek. Like I felt like he did a fine job. It's just not as compelling or as interesting as like Mads Mikkelsen or Javier Bardem. It was not what I cared about, really. Like that was not why I was interested or like really paying attention. Like I was just interested in what was going to happen with Bond and his arc and the people he had relationships with, and how all that was going to end. So I didn't really care for the plot or think that it was necessarily very good. And I think that does tie into the villain. But to me, it wasn't as big of a detriment as it seems to have been for some other people, maybe.
Right. Well, moving from plot to performances, obviously we've talked about Daniel Craig already, but Léa Seydoux as Madeline Swan. Again, not having seen Spectre, I know she's in that one. You can enlighten me on how she is in that movie, how prominent she is. But I was blown away by her performance here, that she was, to me, like I thought she was excellent. Bond, we see a level of emotion from him that we haven't necessarily seen before, and a lot of that stems from her. And Daniel Craig is like rising to match the emotion that Seydoux is putting out,
Sure.
whether it's because of her connection to him or to their child, to Mathilde, who is, I will say, the cutest little kid of all time. Like I feel like that kid is going to grow up to look like a female version of Jacob Tremblay. I feel like they have the same little cute little face.
Yeah, that kid is quite cute and effective in the movie for sure. Yeah, so I felt Léa Seydoux, I mean, she is, I barely remember her from Spectre. So she, I think that was one of the criticisms of that movie, is that people felt she wasn't all that interesting, or she didn't add a lot, or that her chemistry with Daniel Craig wasn't super good. So I thought she was a huge improvement here, as far as that's concerned. I liked her a lot more. I thought she, again, gave a strong performance, as you've said. And I thought that the two of them together felt a little bit more real, felt a little bit more genuine, and something I could latch on to from an emotional standpoint. The most exposure I have to her, I mean, she's been around for a good while. I would say is Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, probably, where she plays. It's pretty cool. She's been in both these franchises, but she plays the villain in that, one of the villains in that movie, and she was really great in that. And here as like kind of like a quasi hero. I thought that she did really well. But yeah, I think compared to some others, Lashana Lynch and Ana de Armas, I thought that they definitely stole the show in a bigger way, just because of they get more to do, especially from an action standpoint. But they were all good.
Right. Well, that was the next thing I wanted to talk about, bringing them into the picture as well. So for so long, we've seen the women of James Bond, the Bond girls, as nothing more than just items. They're damsels in distress, and Bond is saving them or in love with them. But here we've got, like, he's in love with Léa Seydoux's character, but she is also an agent and badass and can protect herself and her child. And then you throw in Paloma, Ana de Armas, who is a very real character as well, that she's not just like this stone cold killer. She's experienced, and obviously you can tell by what she's able to do. But when we first meet her, she's super nervous. She's drinking. She's stumbling on her words. Like, she just says that she has 3 weeks training, but obviously her skills show a little bit more than that. But still, that it's not just like this, it's not just like James Bond, and then this woman is like equally suave and right, comfortable doing what she's doing. And then someone who is more comfortable doing what they're doing, Lashana Lynch's character of Nomi, the new 007, talk about a badass there as well. And the dynamic that the two 007s have together is great as well. It's sort of like a rivalry at first, but then a mutual respect and a friendship. But I really loved all three of those characters.
Yeah, I think the strongest, well, not the strongest necessarily, because of course Bond's relationship with Léa Seydoux's character, Madeline Swan, is totally different from the one he has with Nomi, Lashana Lynch's character. But I thought those were definitely, the most, of course, they have the most screen time, they have the most to do. Ana de Armas did a fantastic job with the little screen time that she does get. Right. And yeah, I mean, she was just a joy. She's a great performer. She's a great actor. We've known that. I think it's 4 years ago this week, Blade Runner 2049 came out, and a lot of people got their first exposure to her. And she was incredibly memorable. Stole a lot of the scenes in that movie. Of course, Knives Out a couple years ago now as well. So she's been getting bigger and better. And yeah, I mean, I could have seen a lot more of her in this movie, but I was not necessarily like mad that I didn't get it, because I thought with everyone else there was just so much to balance, and I was still pleased with what everyone else got. And Lashana Lynch, of course, 007. There's a lot of fun banter. I thought that was some of the best moments of the movie, were the scenes with just her and Daniel Craig one-on-one, or where they're bantering around with some of their other associates. I thought that just really worked really, really well. It certainly could have been worse, given some of the criticisms that there have been and some of the concerns there might have been from some people, but I thought that was great. And then of course, Madeline Swan and the way that they took the relationship between her and Bond and really built it up, I thought, from Spectre was pretty much as best as they could have done.
Right. Well, I'm not like you. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm like upset that we didn't get more of them. I would have taken anything that we could have gotten, but I will say I'm upset that the timing of this, that these at least two new characters that are both fantastic are coming in at the last movie, and this chapter is closing, and it's not that in the next Daniel Craig Bond movie we're going to get more, we have a promise of more Paloma or of more Nomi, but instead that like we just got introduced to these people and that's it. There's no more that they can do, because I saw an interview with was it Barbara Broccoli, and they were talking about, someone had asked like, is there a chance of like a spinoff with either Paloma or with Nomi as 007? And she was like, oh, well, we've never done that before. I would say that that's not a possibility, that we wouldn't really look into that. So it's not like the Daniel Craig Bond movies are over, but we're going to keep living in this Daniel Craig Bond universe with other characters. Like it's done. So that's a bummer, with so many good characters being introduced just now, but we'll always have our 7 minutes of Ana de Armas, No Time to Die screen time.
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly feel that. No doubt, it's going to be tough going. I think from here, I would not want to be Barbara Broccoli and the producers. Have to move on from this one.
Well, a couple more points I want to hit before we wrap up. This movie, 2 hours and 43 minutes, jam-packed with set pieces, from that opening chase in Italy all the way to the end and the attack on the island. Did you have a favorite from any of these that really stood out above the rest?
That's tough. Honestly, there was less action, I feel, than maybe I was even expecting. And when it happened, it was big, but I thought that it wasn't
like continuous throughout, but there were probably like 6 to 7 big set pieces spread out throughout this.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, I know one that really stood out to me was the Norway chase. And then kind of like there is some gun battles and things in the forest. I thought that was really cool. Yeah.
I really like the Cuba scene with Ana de Armas, where you get to see her in action as well. But that has all 3 of the big players. You've got her, Lashana Lynch, and then Daniel Craig as Bond as well, like shooting out, taking down Spectre. You've got the scientist in there in between. You've got, it's like action and shootouts, but then there's a little bit of, I guess, stunt element to it with like the different levels that they're fighting on, and then the car crash bit at the end.
Yeah, definitely.
But really like that one. The opening sequence I thought really set the tone as well, because you've seen so many of those bits from the teasers that we've gotten for the last 2 years, whether it was Bond on the motorcycle going up the steps and doing the big jump, or the car with the artillery and the headlights and spinning around, and him jumping off the bridge with the cable to then wrap around below. So that was even though we'd seen a lot of it, it was still just as thrilling as I expected it to be. And not really like a giant set piece, but that finale at the end where we've got the one take of him going up the stairs to his final moments. Rest in peace. But that was beautiful as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the strongest bits of action in any Bond movie, I think the entire franchise, that at least what seemed like a one take, going up that stairwell, I thought was phenomenal. Punching, shooting, grenades, just a really, really well designed and really well executed moment. And going back to the Norway scene I was talking about, what I liked is that it started out as like a pursuit, a chase, and you got the SUVs bashing back and forth, and then they get into the woods, they're able to hide. And then Bond kind of has to go through the woods and think on his feet, like, how am I going to take out these vehicles, the motorcycle and the Jeep? And
the cable was very cool.
The cable, he uses a winch to get it, to take advantage of he takes out an SUV, and then he uses wrench on that to take out a motorcycle, and then he takes out another SUV using another part of the woods that I won't spoil. But yeah, I thought that was just really inventive and fun compared to some of the other stuff. But yeah, I think those two, Cuba, yeah, I also really enjoyed that. That was like, I think one of the very first, like after the opening scene, that's like the next bit of action. So I thought that was really fun. And yeah, Ana de Armas, the way she was kicking ass was pretty awesome to see as well.
Well, we have to at least address this, since this is the final chapter for Daniel Craig and we're finishing up our review here. Looking ahead, it's the way that the movie business works right now. We can't even finish enjoying No Time to Die before we think about who's next for James Bond. I know obviously we've seen lists, we've seen fan casting and everything. Do you have something, Johnny, that would be blue sky for you, or is it just like I'll take what they give me?
Yeah,
we know that they're not doing anything. They're not even looking until after this year ends, until 2022. So
yeah, I just, it's so hard to say. I mean, I fucking hate, like, I just feel so bad for anyone who has to follow Daniel Craig. I mean, that's just a nightmare, I feel. But there's always going to be new people, and they're always going to, they could be good, they could be great. So you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. I think just getting someone, that you trust to be capable and to do all the things that Bond needs, to be badass and to be strong and to be, handsome and to be, coming after Daniel Craig, though, you're going to have other qualities as well, not just the classic ones. Like, you need to have an emotional core, and you have to have some, vulnerability. And I just think I would get someone who can do all those things and take it some sort of new direction, whether that's, casting, a person of color or something different, something that just like twists it. Of course they're not going to.
Right. Like I don't want Tom Hardy or Henry Cavill, like
absolutely not
similar, no. Similar big buff guys.
Also, I'm sick of these fan casts for guys that are closing in on 50 years old, or guys in their 40s, or guys closing in on 40. That's not going to work. That doesn't make any sense unless you want them for like one movie, and that one movie
unless it's Idris Elba
next year. No, Idris Elba would be terrible as well. Like I do not want a man who is closing in on in his 50s and his 60s to be playing James Bond. Like, we have old James Bond. Daniel Craig was old James Bond. Like, James Bond should be someone tip top shape, like in the prime of their life. And I think that you can find guys that are in that zone. I mean, Daniel Craig, he's 53 now, so he's in his late 30s, I guess, when he got the role. I guess so Henry Cavill would be in like that age range. Tom Hardy's far too old. Idris Elba is far too old. Michael Fassbender, some of these other names I've seen. I don't know. I guess if Henry Cavill wanted to do it and they were like, oh, let's do it with Henry Cavill, like, I wouldn't be mad at it. I wouldn't be mad. I do like Henry Cavill, but I feel like there's just a lot more inspired choices they can do. And maybe it's going to be a much smaller name, someone that we're not really that familiar with, like someone who's been in some things but isn't a huge name. Because I've seen names like, Daniel Kaluuya thrown around, or Riz Ahmed, and some other people. And of course, those are Oscar-nominated, Oscar-winning actors, well-known actors. So they could go that route. I mean, I would certainly not turn down Daniel Kaluuya as James Bond. I think he would be amazing. But there's a lot of directions they can take it. So I have an open mind. If they never made another James Bond movie, I think I'd be fine with it. I think I'd be happy ending with Daniel Craig and with this film. But I know that's, of course, never going to happen. So fingers crossed,
right.
That it keeps my interest and keeps me invested in the franchise beyond just one actor.
My biggest thing, more so than the who, I just want them to take time. Like, yeah. I know they said they're not going to start looking even until 2022, but I hope they don't look in 2022 and then start filming in 2023. Sure. I don't need another Bond movie within the next like 6 or 7 years at least. The Daniel Craig movies were so iconic. Like, give it some time to breathe. Let his legacy rest. Don't like just immediately hop onto the next one and start churning these things out like some other projects right now. I've seen one of the big names recently ever since Bridgerton, which I have not seen, but Regé-Jean Page has been a big, obviously person of color. He's young, he's attractive. And again, I haven't seen Bridgerton. I haven't seen him act. I can't speak on that whatsoever, but I know he's like one of the biggest stars in pop culture right now. So
yeah,
that
I'd be down for that. Yeah.
An intriguing twist there. But personally, I don't think I have necessarily someone who's like top of my list. Please make this person James Bond. Just
Right.
As long as they give it some time, I'll be okay with what comes next.
Bonus question. For the next movie, whoever, regardless of who stars in it, who would you pick to direct it if you had to choose one person?
Well, we obviously just saw, as you would, I don't know if this would be your pick because you just want him to do Dune stuff for the rest of his life. But we did see, and we have known that Denis Villeneuve is a big time Bond fan and says that he would be very interested in doing one of those movies. I would not turn down a Denis Villeneuve Bond movie because everything that he has touched has been fantastic so far. I can only imagine that would continue into this. But I don't know, this would be too mainstream. And again, another person who is probably an obvious pick, but would be too wrapped up in everything that they've already got going on to take on another franchise. But just when we're talking about Bond and like bringing in a new, like taking it in a new direction, bringing in someone, a different age, a different style, like it reminded me a lot of like the way that we've talked about what the Batman is going to be compared to the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. So a Matt Reeves Bond movie.
Okay.
If he successfully, again, he's going to be wrapped up with all sorts of Batman Gotham stuff for the foreseeable future. So it's not possible, but like knowing how he's approaching the Batman, I think that someone with that style, that approach to the Bond universe is what it needs to kind of keep it from getting stale.
Yeah, that's a great choice. I mean, look at what he did with Planet of the Apes. I mean,
right. Yeah.
That's a good choice. I think just really, well, you talked about Villeneuve, you also mentioned Reeves. Both those filmmakers are very, as you said, very much tied up in their own franchises for the foreseeable future. I just think anyone, we keep talking about obvious choices, but like anyone who is a trusted, well-established, creative, big budget filmmaker, I think would be a decent choice. You know what I mean? I think it very well could be an obvious choice when they go ahead and do it, because this isn't something where they take a whole lot of risks. You know what I mean? But who knows? And it's also interesting to note that Cary Joji Fukunaga was the first American director to ever do a James Bond movie. So it seems like they're opening up their choices. Like they have a little better, bigger stock to pull from. So we'll see if they opt to go with another British filmmaker after this, or if they're going to keep it open.
Well, any final thoughts on No Time to Die, on James Bond, before we wrap this up and move on?
I am sad to see it go, obviously. Daniel Craig, most specifically, because I really did love him in this role. I grew up with him, watched Casino Royale when I was a little kid, when I probably shouldn't have been watching certain parts of it. Played the video game with him in it on PlayStation 3 like years and years ago.
The Quantum of Solace video game was undefeated on PS3.
Absolutely.
It was like this is a whole separate story, but my parents wouldn't let me get like Call of Duty or like shooting games like that.
Yeah.
Like something that was just like shooting based, but because it was a Bond game, like it was a movie, it was like based on something like a movie or a story but it obviously had all the shooting elements and stuff that I was like, this is my loophole, baby. This is the one.
Yeah, no, that's funny. I mean, that's a huge, that's a huge stepping stone, at least in my life, and like growing up and playing video games and stuff. And then, going out to see Skyfall and Spectre opening weekend, like with my entire family and whatnot. It was just, it's just been, it's been a long road. And I think it could have been a whole lot worse to go out on. I think this was a really solid, strong note. And if you can leave him crying, leave him laughing, leave him smiling. I feel like that's what ended up happening here.
Definitely. We didn't mention it, but there is a good bit of humor in here from Bond as well. Yeah. But yeah, I laughed, I cried, I was absolutely floored. 94 out of 100, second best movie of the year for me so far. I would recommend watching this however you're comfortable, but if possible, do it on the biggest screen possible in a IMAX theater and just really enjoy it. But really, really, really big fan of No Time to Die. But now we've got an interview with someone else that I am a really, really, really big fan of. We are tossing it over to my interview with Nick Mohammed, who plays Nate the Great on Ted Lasso. Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. I'm your host, Zach Goins, and today I'm once again joined by Nick Mohammed, Nate the Great from Ted Lasso. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Zach. Thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you back. I know, obviously, a lot has gone down since the last time that we spoke, with season 2 just wrapping up on Friday of Ted Lasso. But before we get into any sort of season 2 talk, which there's a lot to discuss, I want to talk Emmys, because obviously you guys just came off a huge couple of weeks with 20 nominations, 7 wins. You yourself nominated for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Comedy. Talk to me about that experience. How great was that to have the first season take off?
Yeah, I mean, just what wonderful. I mean, completely surprising. I think, obviously we knew the show was doing well, which everyone was delighted about, but you can never anticipate these things. And the awards is sometimes the awards thing can be a bit noisy and distracting sometimes, but it was just we were just so delighted that the show's been taken to people's hearts, and so delighted for Jason, Hannah, and Brett, and just everyone, and to just to have that recognition was, I mean, completely surreal and overwhelming, really. And I went to the Emmys, like I was there for 48 hours, the whole experience. So I flew from the UK on the Saturday night, did the Emmys on the Sunday, and flew back on the Monday. And so I was just sort of jet lagged throughout the whole
quick
thing.
whirlwind. Yeah, I've got to imagine that being nominated with one of 4 co-stars within the same category. How crazy was that? Was there a little competition amongst you all, being like, because it wasn't like up against somebody random, but your own people?
Oh no, I mean, to be honest, we all undoubtedly thought that it was going to go to Brett, and there was part of me who was like, maybe Brendan, because co-created the show and stuff. So me and Jeremy were just like, we're just lucky to be here.
We're just here for the
we're here for the free booze and the food. We weren't getting up on that podium, so we were like, we just got to have a really lovely time without any of that stress. And we didn't prepare speeches. We were like, no, Brett's got this. It's all right. He's going to do us good. So yeah, we were delighted for him. Obviously.
That's awesome. I'm sure that was a blast. Well, I know your visit to the Emmys was the first time that you'd come to the US in your life, which is a pretty, most people, I would imagine it's just like a tourist trip or something, but you were here on big business. What was that experience like?
Well, like I say, it's such a whirlwind visit. I mean, I loved
48 hours. Yeah.
It was, I didn't get to see obviously much of LA, and but yeah, it was incredible. It was Jason's birthday as well that weekend, so that was nice. And it was, it was the first time that we'd all been able to actually hang out together when we weren't filming. So it was actually one of the real first times that we properly got to socialize as a group, and especially because COVID has been very restricting, and so it was just genuinely nice to see everyone again after a while. And so yeah, they're such a great group of people. So yeah.
Definitely. Well, pleasantries aside, we've got to get down to the nitty gritty now. We've got to talk season 2 and Nate's behavior, because I will say it's delightful to talk to Nick Mohammed again, because it gets kind of hard when I'm watching the show to separate you being so wonderful and pleasant from what we've seen from Nate recently. What's going on with him?
Well, yeah, dear old Nate. It's certainly a different story to season 1. There's lots of things going on with him. I think it's fair to say a lot of his behavior, not to condone any of it, but a lot of it stems from the toxic relationship he has with his dad. He's lacking a real guiding light, a father figure, a support network even, and a lot of those things were in place in season 1, not the relationship with his dad, but Ted became that force for good in his life, and he relied on him. He was a great leader. He supported him and encouraged him, and he empowered him, and he got promoted to be a coach by the end of season 1. In season 2, like he says in that speech to Ted at the end in episode 12, he feels completely and utterly abandoned. He's completely lost. He's clearly going on a bit of a power trip as well. Things have gone to his head. He's lashing out in all the wrong directions. He starts off small, again, not to condone it, but, sort of abusing the kit man, who, he used to do his job, and, so, and you can sort of maybe sort of see where Nate's coming from. He used to do that job. He's really pernickety. It starts off all right, but then that builds,
Right.
and then, he turns to Colin, and then, he kind of starts working his way up until, finally he lays into Ted, and it's just, it's heartbreaking, really. But he's absolutely out of control, and, he's spiraling, really.
Was there, of his streak of bad behavior, was there something that was most appalling to you? I know, like, in those last 2 episodes alone, obviously you've got the Trent Crim leak, and then telling off Ted, cursing him out, going to work for Rupert. But for me personally, it was ripping that believe sign in half, because that's just so symbolic of everything that has been built at Richmond. Yeah, when I heard about that, Brendan told me that, and we were filming outside, just episode 10 or 11 or something, and he just said, oh, because they were just tweaking the script for episode 12, and so, oh yeah, by the way, we're thinking that we might, have Nate rip the belief sign. I was like, what? I was just, I follow this show like, the fans follow the show, when we read the scripts and then watching the show, because you don't always get to, you're not always, especially with COVID, we weren't always, we're kind of filming in bubbles, really. So you don't always get to see everyone else's stuff. And so it's a delight to kind of follow everyone else's storylines. But yeah, that moment when Brendan told me that that's what they were thinking, I just fell on the floor. It's like horrible. But there are so many beats, which, that one where he throws the t-shirt, it's kind of, you don't see it on camera, but he throws the t-shirt at the kit man and says, I'll make your life an effing misery. And, all that stuff's horrible. And, the inappropriate pass towards Keely, just all that stuff was, deeply problematic, but, challenging, but also fulfilling to film in a way, because it's good, it's telling a completely different story. And it felt like, it was shining a light on behavior that we probably need to shine a light on, like bullying and so on. Right. Well, I want to know, what was your reaction? You mentioned, like, reading the script, finding this stuff out after being such, a fan favorite in season 1 and the hopeful story. And then as you're reading these scripts, wait, this is what's happening to my character? Was that shocking or exciting as an actor to do something completely different? It is exciting. I mean, I knew broadly that that's what they were thinking from very early on. I mean, even when, we're filming the gala episodes in season 1, which is episode 3 or 4, I can never remember. I remember Jason, just because we sat next to each other through a lot of that, and he would just, talking about his plans for a potential season 2 or 3. We didn't know it had been picked up again at that point. And yeah, he outlined, roughly this being an Empire Strikes Back type thing for Nate. And, and they've absolutely, true to their word, absolutely stuck with that. And, I didn't know all the details, but, that kind of dark sort of downward spiral that he's gone on, absolutely, that was there from the start. And, it's seeded early on, Right, I was going to ask about that. Yeah, because there are glimmers. I'm sorry, go ahead. No, I was going to say, well, I interrupted, but there are glimmers of that. The first ever time we see Nate, he is screaming at Ted, like he's shouting him, get off the pitch, get off the pitch. He will do, this is a character who will do anything for that club. He's ruthless. He will scream, and it's only when he learns his new coach, he's like, oh, sorry. Right. So he calls Rebecca a shrew. He points her and calls her a shrew. That's really harsh. And the roast in general, the roast, because that seems like something that is played for jokes, and it's like when you're watching season 1, it's a Nate moment, like you're cheering for him, but then to see how he feeds off, he's being vicious, even though it's funny, but he's just feeding off of that praise that he gets for being mean. Yeah. So it's not something completely out of the blue. And he wrote all that stuff. He wanted Ted to deliver that speech. If you remember in episode 7, so he wrote all this stuff. That's Definitely. All up in Nate's head. So he's absolutely. It's all been there. It's just he didn't quite have enough oomph to kind of deliver it in the way he's now kind of coming into his own in season 2. Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned the first season, first scene where you're running across the field, because I remember last time I asked you about that, and you said that was one of the final scenes that you filmed in season 1, and so it was kind of like the figuring out, wait, at what stage is Nate then? So I'm curious, same question for this season, when you're filming Out of Order, is it challenging to be like, wait, I'm not this mean yet. I'm still like, oh, I just filmed something big, but now I have to revert back to episode 2 Nate or something. A little bit. We mostly filmed in order, to be honest. There was, I think episode 4 and episode 9 were slightly out of whack, but it was mostly
in order. I would just ask lots of questions because, to be honest, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't. My main concern was, peaking sort of too early and not,
Right.
then not being able to kind of, claw it back. And so I think up to episodes 1 to 4, we're kind of aware that Nate's a bit like, what something, and you could sense that. I could, even when those episodes aired, people were like, no, what's up with Nate? This isn't the Nate we know. There's something up. But it's important that it wasn't more than that, and there was no justification for it. It just felt different,
Right.
and everyone was like, huh. And then I think by episode 5, which is when he takes his mum and dad to the restaurant, I think it's then that we're starting to see this kind of this heel turn. The spitting in the mirror is quite symbolic, and episode 7, and then it kind of tracks quite linearly. Actually, he's lashing out at increasingly sort of in kind of increasingly bigger ways. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I found difficult was trying to make sure that the kind of comedy moments in Nate, which are kind of felt a lot easier in season 1 because it was easier to do the kind of awkward comedy thing than it is to be kind of like, a bit of a bully one moment and then be kind of revert back to sort of season 1 Nate. Because, there are certain, when he's with Keely, he's nervous because he fancies her. And, even when he's out of his comfort, so, even when he's talking to the waitress trying to get the table and she's like, absolutely not. He's season 1 Nate again. And so there's a bit of back and forth. So yeah, the balance of that was, but they're so great. And, the writers and the creators, a lot of them are always on set and stuff. So we're kind of, there's lots of places to ask questions and we're well supported so we don't kind of suddenly do something that feels out of whack, which is what is coming.
Right. Well, what was it like watching the season unfold from, I guess, friends and family getting in touch with you, your Twitter mentions, anything, as people were kind of like, my dad watches the show as well. And I've got the screeners, but he's watching week to week. And he's like, every single episode, man, he texts me, Nate's really upsetting me. Like, so as the fans are kind of seeing that progression you just talked about, what was the reaction like that you heard?
Yeah, it's quite full on, like increasingly full on, I think is fair to say. Particularly off the back of episode 7, which ends with him throwing the t-shirt at Will, the Kit Man, and I think that it ends the episode. I think at that moment,
right.
So it kind of leaves a nasty taste in the mouth, I think. And particularly then with Keely in episode 11, that everyone was like, huh. And occasionally it got a bit heavy, and people were like, "This is triggering for me," and seeing him become a bully, even though he was a victim before that. And so I kind of distanced myself a little bit from some of that because you don't want to get too bogged down into it. But there is a responsibility to kind of portray this stuff for real. And we wanted to, certainly some of the darker stuff and the more kind of raw emotional stuff, the scene between Ted and Nate, it needed to feel real because it felt like we were just building towards that whole point. And so,
Definitely.
I get that there's been a bit of a strong reaction to certain things. But I guess that means, the writers have done their job. They've told the story they want to tell because that's how people should be feeling, because they're not, we don't want to, no one's condoning Nate's behavior. They should be hating on Nate. So that is correct, really.
Right. And
as weird as that sounds.
That's as unhappy as his storyline may make the fans who are rooting for him. That's the brilliance of this show, because I feel like most times your underdog, your season 1 Nate, is someone who's just has a good heart, is wholesome, and then gets confidence, defeats the bully, and then lives happily ever after. But now you have gained that confidence. You did defeat the bully, but then the show is subverting it, and it's like, wait a minute, Nate himself is a bully. He's just got the power now. So what is that? What's this? How does that feel to be able to just defy so many tropes or stereotypes?
I think it's great. I think the writers were so bold with that, and it's brilliant because they could easily have been, season 1 did well, we can rest on our laurels, basically do the same again because everyone likes it. But they absolutely didn't. They completely tested and manipulated the audience in a brilliant way this season. It absolutely took a darker turn. I think any criticism of like early criticism of the show in itself was that, there's not much conflict, and it's all kind of positive and happy, and you can absolutely not say that about season 2 of Ted Lasso. Right. I mean, it deals with some pretty dark stuff, and it goes places where season 1 didn't go, and they absolutely turned things on on the heads. And same with the Roy Keeley storyline as well. You know, in an ideal world, they would live happily ever after, and that would be all fine and sorted. And it's not. And I think there's a real truth to that. And I know, you know, particularly with the Nate storyline, I know that Jason has said before plenty of times, you know, hurt people, and the person who is bullied becoming the bully isn't not saying that is correct or that that's always the case, but there is a truth to that sometimes, that actually these bullies, it just comes from a deep place of insecurity to a time when they were bullied or not made to feel they have any worth. And so that's a story that we're telling with Nate, and there is a truth to that, sadly.
Right. Well, I want to go back one thing. When I was speaking with Hannah last summer, she really, I asked her about the significance of starting with her in episode 1, ending with her to close the final season. She made that seem very significant. And so when season 2 started and it starts with you, I'm like, okay, that's who we're ending with. This is the same thing, but you have almost an anti-Rebecca arc. Instead of the redemptive arc, you're going down the dark path this season. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you, what was the significance of, this being Nate's season?
I mean, what do you mean by the significance? Do you mean? Sorry. Just
how, like, bringing it from the start to the finish. How does that, like, as a foil to Rebecca's season, the redemptive arc, taking Nate down the opposite path?
Yeah, it's like what I was saying before, really. What I just really like that they have, what they've done with these characters. It feels like we know who these characters are off season 1, but then we're just sort of taking them in slightly new directions or kind of unpicking, their characters and giving them more layers. And so, I mean, I remember either Brett or Jason telling me that, they wanted to, their plan is to kind of open and close on Nate's eyes, but at the end of the season, and it's scripted. It says the light in his eyes has gone out. I don't know if that kind of reads on telly, but that sort of in a sort of motivation way in terms of the sort of the look to camera, that was what that was meant to show. And I mean, it's kind of crazy. I remember when they first told me that was their plan for Nate, and it was going to be quite a front and center arc for this season. I was incredibly flattered and excited by it, but also it just told me that they're going to really challenge the viewers. They're going to be really bold in their writing, and and as much as it felt like a good thing to follow Hannah's arc in season 1, and it was a redemptive one, which feels so good and similar to Nate's was a really positive arc. This is a really negative kind of spiral, but really fun and interesting for that as well.
Right. Well, let's take a look at where everything stands right now. Where does season 2 leave us? We've got Nate at West Ham with Rupert. The like you said, Empire Strikes Back. We've got Vader and the Empire teaming up over there. And then Richmond gets promoted. So seemingly there's going to be a collision course there. Season 3 is still in the works, being written. No production has started yet. Do you have any hopes for your character? Do you want him to embrace the bad? Do you want him to redeem himself? If you had your pick.
I mean, if I had my pick, because I'm quite romantic, I'd obviously redeem him. Like, obviously, it would be great if it was a redemptive. I genuinely don't know. As you said, they're writing at the moment. You like you say, you absolutely you can predict there'll be some kind of clash between West Ham and Richmond, but when that happens, whether that opens the season, ends it, is in the middle of it, I don't know. Whether Nate has done too much to really redeem himself. I mean, I wouldn't put it past the writers to have one character that they'd never redeem, because everyone.
That's what you would predict that he comes back around. Yeah,
exactly.
But it's not the case.
Exactly. So, I genuinely don't know. I roughly have been given a few little broad things, but I obviously can't give those away. But who knows? The devil will be in the detail. And I think we start filming early next year. So, but they're writing it now.
Well, I'm excited to see it. I'm thrilled that we got to have you back on the show, Nick. Thank you so much for joining us. It was a blast.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
All right. Well, that was my interview with Nick Mohammed. And now it's time to close out the podcast. Thank you all for listening, for tuning in week and week out. We appreciate you all and could not do it without you.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it beyond words. Keep up with us outside of the show on social media, of course, Twitter, whether, we got giveaways going on, polls, all that good stuff. Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. You can catch all of our episodes there. And you can find those accounts at Inside Film Room.
And while you are at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We're on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, anywhere you can find a podcast. We are there. And be sure to come back next week as we will be talking Halloween Kills and potentially The Last Duel. So it'll be a great episode. We'll see you then.